Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time. We really appreciate it. And as we move through this government briefing, we want to make sure that at the end, there'll be some opportunities to connect with us for further conversation and questions. Welcome. My name is Eric Cooper. I'm the president and CEO of Your San Antonio Food Bank. We've got an agenda that will address the government shutdown, what's currently happening, how that's impacting us. We're going to talk about how we're outreaching to those impacted neighbors. We're going to help you understand a little bit of where we see the impact to our organization, and then ultimately, what are the resources we're going to need to meet that need. When you think about the food bank, our core focus is nourishing our community. We know that when we do that, uh, individuals and families thrive. Food is that building block. It nourishes health. It helps the child learn. We tend to think we fight the daily disaster of poverty, but when a natural disaster occurs or a man made disaster like the government shutdown, we step up to that too. It's been a busy year. We started our fiscal year July 1st, just 3 days later, with the flooding of the Hill Country, the tragedy in Kerrville. And our team has been responding to that need and will continue to respond to that need. But now, due to disagreement on a federal budget, the federal shutdown is occurring. We have experienced this before. This is the fourth federal shutdown in my career, um, that has gone on for a duration. And so we'll talk about where we think this might impact us directly and has impacted us already. When you think about our territory, um, I want to remind you we serve 29 counties here in Southwest Texas. Within those 29 counties, we have hundreds of nonprofit organizations, schools, churches, senior centers, municipalities. We all work together in the fight against hunger. Many of them accessed our inventory uh, uh, through the warehouse, and many partner with us on on-site distribution activities. We have our main facility here in San Antonio, but we also have the New Braunfels Food Bank in Comal County. We have the Frio County Food Bank in Frio in Pearsall there, and then our San Angelo Food Bank in Tom Green County. If you think about the total population of those 29 counties, it's roughly 2.9 million people that live in this region of Texas. And knowing that there's 2.9 million, if you think about just the last 12 months, last year, for us, we served 577,000 unique individuals. So roughly 1 out of 5 Southwest Texans had experience with your San Antonio Food Bank or one of our pantry network members. Um, uh, we're stressed, we're tapped, we're for working to provide food in the space of today, tomorrow, and a lifetime. And I know as stakeholders, you understand our framework that we're really working to get groceries and meals to people today in the immediate. And then we're also meeting that need for tomorrow through SNAP, WIC, Medicaid, TANF, long-term care, the Children's Health Insurance Program, and in some counties, access to utility assistance. That is what we're doing for tomorrow. And then our lifetime services include workforce development, job training, and job placement. So adding more demand is something we're calculating how we will respond. And we're going to share a little bit with you on how we see that coming together. But to give you a feel of exactly what's happening in the government shutdown, I want to turn the time over to Mario Blado. He's our Chief of Government and Public Affairs, and then Robert Campbell, Vice President of Policy for Feeding America. Mario?
Yeah, good morning, and thank you, Eric, and thank you all for joining this call regarding this most important, critical, and unfortunate topic. So from the San Antonio Food Bank's Government Relations Shop, question, how did we get to this unprecedented time in our nation's history, and certainly on Capitol Hill? If we go back in time several months ago, you might remember the federal employee layoffs to cut government spending, and then the federal budget tax bill that was signed into law on July 4th. And as Eric mentioned earlier, that was the same day that our beloved Hill Country was hit by that tragic and devastating flood event just north of us. With the passage and the signing of that federal legislation came drastic cuts to safety net programs like Medicaid and SNAP. Since then, the U.S. House has passed their version of a budget continuing resolution, a CR, to keep the government open. Plenty of back and forth has been going on between both political parties, especially when it comes to repealing the cuts. Our Democratic friends have been trying to restore the cuts and advocate for the extension of the Affordable Care Act, the ACA subsidies. They're set to expire in December, and premiums for families and individuals are predicted to skyrocket, along with medical copays and deductibles. Next slide. With the White House, the U.S. House, and the U.S. Senate in control by our Republican friends, they've stood firm regarding their position of opening the government first before any negotiations can take place. So we're in this for 21 days now, right? And there's no off-ramp in sight. And meanwhile, the U.S. Senate has been taking votes on the Senate floor. They actually voted yesterday. They'll be voting again. So up to around 11 votes have taken place, and they cannot come to an agreement. They can't get it done. They can't get it passed. And so this inaction is putting federal employees at agencies like the Department of Commerce, Education, Energy, HUD, Treasury, DHS, USDA, the military, and our clients in uncharted waters. I want to recognize Feeding Texas, our state association, and my colleagues at our state association. They do a great job at keeping a pulse on state policy priorities for us, and certainly during this time, staying in contact with key state agencies like TDA, Texas Department of Agriculture, and HHSC, Health and Human Services Commission. When you talk about public benefits that are important and critical to families, like WIC and SNAP, they're keeping a pulse on that. And if this government shutdown goes into November and December, a lot of uncertainty for families that we serve and that rely on those critical programs to set food on their table and take care of their families. I want to also recognize Feeding America, our national organization, and the government relations team that's housed up in Washington, D.C. They do a great job at keeping a pulse on public policy priorities on the federal level. Policy priorities like the Farm Bill, like child nutrition reauthorization, like appropriations, key federal pieces of legislation that help food banks and families make ends meet. Robert Campbell, whom Eric mentioned and we'll be hearing from next, Robert and his team, Carrie, Monica, Rachel, and others that are housed up in Washington, D.C., do a great job. They're on the Hill each and every day, and they're keeping a pulse, and certainly right now during this tragic government shutdown. I can honestly tell you that they're angels on our wings, on our shoulders, with respect to this fight against hunger and fight against food insecurity. So Robert, take it away.
Great. Thanks so much, Mario and Eric, for the invitation. It's great to be here. I'll start by saying, those of you on this call, you're in great hands with our friends and colleagues there at the San Antonio Food Bank. As you might know, Eric Cooper is a board member of Feeding America right now. So a great resource for us to help guide our direction from the national office to help make sure that we're aligned and supportive, especially through moments like this. Mario, I had the pleasure of working with him on Feeding America. We have a committee of network members who advise in our government relations space, make sure that we are, again, coordinated at the granular level for all the different issues and details that Mario laid out that he and you all and we are so focused on. So again, thank you for the invitation. Happy to be here. Again, wish we were under different circumstances. I feel like that's often the case in the government relations space when things are challenging, when there's potential disruptions. Of course, we continue to show up every day, just as you all do, to meet the needs of those in your community. So I'm just going to say a few things to reinforce a lot of what was mentioned, and I know there's going to be more details throughout this call. Where you all get more granular. As Mario mentioned, from DC here, it's a challenging time. Obviously, the nature of shutdowns are kind of rooted in a little bit of dysfunction and disagreement, right? So we are undoubtedly in one of those moments now. As you mentioned, 21 days. We're pushing the I think if I remember correctly, hearing this is the longest full government shutdown in history now. For those who might remember, as Eric said, been through a couple of these in our careers. In 2018-19, that was only a partial shutdown, and that was the longest ever partial shutdown at 35 days. There are undeniable impacts and concerns that are raised in a moment like this. And again, I know you'll talk about these a little more detail, but as Mario mentioned, we have reason to be pretty concerned around the status of resources and benefits if the shutdown continues into the November timeframe. We're in close contact with USDA at the national level on what we can say or what we know with certainty around big programs like SNAP and WIC, critical programs like child nutrition programs, school meals, after school meals, all those that are foundational to the work that we all do. The headline of these programs, and I'm trust you'll hear this as well. Please stay in close contact with each other. Please lean on the San Antonio Food Bank. Listen to your state agencies as they are navigating these uncharted times. If we get to November and there might be a disruption of benefits, it would be the first time this kind of disruption would happen in the history of the program. There's been times where we've had to, in a prior long shutdown, move benefits out early. Those of you who might remember that, we've fast-tracked and moved benefits out early, but it was the full amount of benefits. The concern now is that they might not be able to fund the benefits in full for the SNAP program, uncertainty in WIC as to how long into the month of November that might come. Now, a lot can change. A lot is changing daily of what the negotiations might look like. Whether they can adjust funds to provide a little bit more certainty. From our understanding, USDA is taking every action available to them to shift things around to try to make sure there's no disruption in these programs. But the big picture here is stay in close touch with your partners at the San Antonio Food Bank, with your colleagues, listen very closely with the State Association and Feeding Texas, the state department of the state agencies that are administering these programs. They will have the latest on exactly how that might look across Texas and in your service area. The other piece is the partnership that we are able to lean on is that from the national office where I sit in DC in coordination with great friends like Mario and Eric and the others on their teams is making sure that we tell the story of what's happening, right? There are real impacts for individuals, whether that's federal employees who might be furloughed and not able to work, not allowed to work legally and not receiving their paychecks. Active duty military members, we worry that by the end of this month, we'll see major missed paychecks for those two groups of individuals. And that's talking about multiple millions of people who would be impacted by a loss of their sustained income. Of course, when we come to big federal nutrition programs and other supports, any disruption could be really, really challenging for folks. So we continue to appreciate hearing from through you all to the food banks and up to the national office here to make sure we're telling that story to those on Capitol Hill. What are the impacts? Why we need a bipartisan agreement to keep the federal government open and funded while we can negotiate while negotiations are critical for other important priorities. Continue. Thank you for having me. I know these are challenging times and uncharted waters. We will continue to stay in partnership with you all in both supporting you with resources as best we can, with information as best we can, so we can all make informed decisions even when challenged. So again, thank you all. Appreciate it. I unfortunately can't stay for the rest of the call. I have to jump over to some shutdown work here in Washington. but really appreciate the invitation, and we'll turn it back over.
Hey, thank you, Robert. So when you think about the storm, the crisis is looming. Think about when our community gets hit with flooding or the winter storm or the Gulf Coast has a hurricane. People want to get prepared. Emergency preparedness is critical. They'll make a run to HEB. They'll generally buy water. They'll get some baked goods. They'll stock up. The same phenomena is happening. So since October 1st, families that knew the government was being shut down started to prepare. So we knew we had to get communication out. And so I'm going to turn the time over to Lauren Granado, our Director of Marketing and Communications, so you can know how we've communicated with those in need.
Sure. Thank you, Eric. So hello, everyone. My name is Lauren Granado, and I'm the Director of Marketing Communications here at the San Antonio Food Bank. And so as we shift into sharing information about our MARCOM efforts, our focus has been to ensure that during this uncertain time, our community receives information that is timely, accurate, as well as compassionate. So at the core of our work right now is the ability to communicate hope, making sure that affected families know that the San Antonio Food Bank is here to help. So through social media announcements, we've shared timely updates that guide our families directly to food distributions and assistance programs. Our website remains a vital hub for information, and our team is monitoring it daily to ensure that information is accurate as the situation evolves. Our media partnerships are wonderful. So it's helping us reach audiences that we couldn't alone. So many of you in this meeting are a part of that effort. And so we're deeply grateful for your media partnerships. And then finally, network coordination. So ensuring that our messaging aligns with Feeding Texas, Feeding America, and then trickles through our partner agencies so that across platforms and across communities, our message is unified and is clear. So together, we're not just communicating that need, we're communicating with confidence that the San Antonio Food Bank and help is here. So the next slide, please. Okay, and so as the situation continues to unfold, we're also committed to meeting our supporters with clarity and with empathy. And so multi-channel outreach through email, our website, and social media is keeping supporters informed of immediate needs. We are utilizing empathy-driven storytelling, and it's really at the heart of this. We're centering neighbor experiences to humanize the broader crisis. These stories remind our community that behind every number, behind every household affected, it's a family, it's a parent, a child navigating that uncertainty. And with clarity and action, we're building transparency about our needs and impact. That transparency protects the trust that our community has in us as an organization. It drives generosity and it reinforces that we are reliable and we are a steady presence no matter how unpredictable the landscape becomes. So in short, our words must both inform and inspire because that clear communication builds calm and confidence when a lot of things are feeling uncertain right now. Next slide, please. And as Robert mentioned earlier, there are real families and households and neighbors that are affected. So to close this section, I want to share a testimonial from one of our neighbors we've been able to serve. Robert is a federal employee that has been affected, as well as an Army veteran. He shared with us that he has experienced government shutdowns before. However, this is the first time he is navigating this shutdown with a family. In his words, he says that that's when it really hit him, how quickly things can change and how much he has relied on the support of the food bank during times like this. So our work at the San Antonio Food Bank is incredibly important. It's a lifeline for our community. Every update that we share, every interview that we give, every post that we publish across social media, it all contributes to that bridge of hope between a family like Robert's and resources and receiving the support that they need. And at this point, I'd like to turn it back over to Eric.
Thanks, Lauren, and thank you for the work that you do. So when you think about our community, oftentimes San Antonio is referred to as military city. USA. Next slide. When you think about federal workers, San Antonio and surrounding communities represents the densest population of federal workers in the state of Texas. About 89,000 federal workers call San Antonio home. There's an additional estimation of about 100,000 government contractors. These are employees of businesses that do business with the federal government that were told, hey, this division is being furloughed, you're laid off, we're not sure when your income is going to be restored. That crisis has driven the hundreds and now thousands of people to the San Antonio Food Bank for help. Our concern is that demand of that 189,000. We estimate that about 50,000 people will come from just that tier alone. That tier one demand is the individual federal workers or government contractors and the members of their household that will have been coming for food assistance. And so the second tier that we're worried about is those that are currently participating in the federal safety net programs like SNAP and WIC. As Robert was sharing, it would be unprecedented that there'd be a disruption in benefits, but that is what's looming. There's approximately 300,000 individuals that participate in the SNAP and WIC programs. Those individuals on November 1st would receive about $54 million in benefits for their monthly allotment. They have all received a communication from the Health and Human Services Commission that put them on notice that October's benefits that were paid on October 1st are good. But should the federal government not fund the SNAP program for Texas by October 27th, no benefits would be issued on November 1st. This would be a delay in receiving benefits. It's not that the benefits would go away. There would just be a delay in when they would be paid when the government opens back up. So it's going to be bridging that gap for these neighbors that have a disruption in getting their benefits. So important to know that date, October 27th. We're going to be watching it to make sure if the shutdown continues, because if that happens, we know we're going to see a lot more families. The phenomena of stocking up is already occurring, right? If you're on SNAP and you don't know that you're going to get your benefits, they're preparing. About 2/3 of SNAP recipients also ask for food through the San Antonio Food Bank or one of our partner agencies. So there's about 200,000 of the 577,000 that we served last year that are on SNAP. The second date that we're going to want to watch is October 29th. Now, on October 15th, federal workers received a reduction in their paycheck, having missed 3 days of payment. That was on the 15th. Now, on October 29th, this could be a full, first full paycheck that federal and civilian employees would not be paid. We know that's going to drive a lot more families in. October 31st, right? That's for active military and reservists and the DoD personnel. We know from actions that the administration and Congress took, they were able to shuffle around some funds for that earlier paycheck for the military. Again, if it wasn't for great partners, I want to give a shout out to USAA, who's been incredible in supporting our work in connection to disasters, that through their help, we've been able to support many military families that have asked for help in their stock up of provisions. After November 1st, it's just the uncertainty. Will the federal programs that help our neighbors be supported? And what will the future bring? All right. We're going to need some help as we mobilize. I mentioned USAA. Many other corporations have been key parts of our natural disaster response in the Hill Country. And there's too many to count, but you know who you are. Our great partners at Valero and HEB, they're always behind us, but many others that stepped up to help us meet the needs of the natural disaster that occurred in the Hill Country. There's an opportunity to strengthen us as we work to meet the needs of this man-made disaster. And here to highlight how you can engage is Michael Guerra, our Chief Development Officer.
Eric, thank you. And good morning, everybody. So that's a lot of data, a lot of dates. And I want to take just a minute to just to breathe into that and to see if we can, for a second shift, go back to a little bit where Lauren was, of just centering ourselves on the neighbor, on the one. That picture you see on this slide is a picture, it's a pandemic photo. And those individuals in those lines, were at a place of fear and a place of concern. And I think as you listened to the data that Eric shared, and the number that's on this slide, 350,000 between the individuals affected that are federal employees, plus the potential SNAP and WIC recipients, that's a big number. That starts to feel like pandemic numbers. And so for us, we've started to put together get help and give help strategies. And Eric talked to us some about that. Of course, my world, and you all who I get to work with know it is about how the community can give help and how we can lean in. And so the team that looks after food and philanthropy and volunteerism and Lauren's world, the gift of voice and marketing communication, has been incredibly active really since the beginning of October to support Mario and the team and Eric and Emily, our Chief Program Officer, in preparing for resources that are going to be needed. So the food, as we jump out into the coming week, our team's actively preparing to source and to secure an extra 1 million pounds of food per week that this continues. Okay, so I want to say that it's not just 1 million pounds a week, but because we're already doing 2 million pounds a week, and we have a great food team and food partners that help us with that, but an extra 1 million pounds, so 50% more to meet that need that we're anticipating. That need, of course, comes with a cost, and that cost for us to source and distribute food is about 50 cents a pound. So that's an extra $500,000 a week for the duration of that this might go. So that's kind of what we're teeing up as far as what we're seeing around the corner. Can I have the next slide, please? So I mentioned that my world kind of in the teams that support all of us is around food, time, money, and voice. And so the food side of this, it's interesting. November kicks off a traditional campaign called Food for SA with News 4 and Security Service and some other great partners, HEB, et cetera, where you have a goal of raising 4 million pounds just in normal times. But I mentioned we want and need to look at an extra 1 million pounds per week to meet the need that we're anticipating between the federal employees and those who might then miss, of course, SNAP or WIC benefits. That can happen from our food partners, manufacturers, retailers, but also through community food drives. And so you all know how to get a hold of us, but of course, there's the URL for the Give Food part of our work. Can I have the next slide? And I'll say the team has already been looking at just from a WIC side, looking at formula, diapers, baby food. We know sometimes those are some of the most needed items, and kind of having gone through a number of responses, I think our team is critically aware of where those items might be that we're going to need. And so if you're thinking of something special outside of our 12 most wanted, some of those items for the youngest in our community might be welcome as well. The need doesn't get met without the gift of time also, and that's volunteerism. most of you all have connected with us that way. And if you haven't, we certainly invite you in. We're standing up extra distributions. We have more curbside distributions in the afternoon at our San Antonio Food Bank, other mobile food distributions across the 29 counties from San Angelo down to Ensenal, out to Seguin and everywhere in between. And then that means also we're going to need to pack more food boxes like the one you see in this picture, pack more produce bags. And so there'll be a need for just more volunteers through our warehouse if this is going to continue. So there's the link for volunteering. And so I'll call out to the need for volunteers as well. Next slide, please. I mentioned earlier about philanthropy and money and our anticipation if we are going to get to that extra £1 million a week to meet that what we anticipate is the need. That's about an extra $500,000 to support that. When it comes to both food and money, Eric's left us in a good place financially. We have a warehouse that does have some food in it. So we'll be able to float a little bit of that. We've had to do that in times of natural disaster or the pandemic. We do have some in the warehouse. We do have a little bit in the bank. But for us to really meet this need, it is going to require extra food and the extra dollars. And you can see that there. We will be, as Lauren mentioned, asking the community to lean in with, the small gifts of $10, $50, $100. Big checks go a long way, of course. So we invite anybody who thinks that they can do that from a foundation, corporation, or otherwise to consider that. And if this kind of shuts down early, that money will be put to the daily disaster of poverty, of course. And next slide, please. So the final thing that we need of food time money is the gift of voice. Lauren and her team oversee that for us, but it really is where you can lean in and amplify our efforts. There's our social handle. I think telling the story from today is going to be hugely important, but I think telling a story also that's a story of not just of compassion and loving kindness, but also we don't want to create undue fear in the community. Because of you all, we're going to be able to respond. And so we're going to put out communication, as Lauren said, that's dignifying to our neighbors, that's not creating fear in the community, but helps people just really understand where they can get support and how they can give support. And we'll lean on all of our channels and all of our partners to be able to do that. You see Coop there in front of the cameras. He's been doing that a lot lately. Eric has been for us. We know that will continue because we just want to help our community know how to give and to get help. So I think that covers my food time money voice. The next slide, please. Again, we're helping to remind our community that they can get help. Our website and much of our social is bilingual. Our case managers here on site are all bilingual and available to help multi-language populations. And so we are here now at our URL. Please encourage anybody you know to visit that. And lastly, the last slide here is just, if you need to follow up with myself when it comes to philanthropy, giving a food time money voice, or for media relations, please do reach out. Actually, the phone's been blown up a little bit as we've been going on today. And then for any questions related to the policy items, the GR items that Mario covered, and he just does such a great job for us, there's his direct information. Please reach out to him either by phone or email. We will continue to keep you updated with email updates. And if this does grow and strengthen in the need from the community, you might look for another stakeholder gathering in the near future. But on behalf of Eric, our incredible board of directors, and this team, thank you all for being with us today. Thank you for joining us in the fight against hunger, but particularly for feeding hope to our community. Thank you all. God bless. And let's get after it.
That concludes the briefing. Again, if you have follow-up questions, all of our partners, please connect. You can connect with me directly or Michael or Mario. But thank you again for taking the time. We did record this, so if you'd like to share it, you're welcome to do so. Just reach out, request that. I just again want to thank everyone for being a part of this update, the team that gave briefings, but then all of you that were in attendance. So thank you so much. Stay posted.